that whole room ended up being created entirely out of CG, except for the back wall with forest in it, so we were forced to deal with that. This is what Pierre had always been afraid of. If you go into pure CG, his life is fairly easy. If you have this thing in the back that you have to deal with, that's when it becomes a nightmare. And of course, what's in the room is not what's supposed to be reflected in the windows. It's like a rig or nothing at all, or a camera crew, you know. So we did it with glass in. We did it with the glass out. We did it with the doors gone. Pierre preferred the doors gone, but Fincher didn't really like it very much, so we only did it once, and that didn't turn out to be the take he liked. So he got the one
with the windows out.
With the windows out, so all the reflections are put in by Pierre. The problem is that, of course, it's this fine little bouncy thing that the motion control camera is doing and trying to get the glass back into the mullions. And there's this tiny little 3D thing. You can't tell which is the front part or the back part of the mullion, and it's changing like between each pixel. So it just became this like complete nightmare of minutia that nobody will ever know about. But in the end, we got great reflections in there of a kitchen that doesn't exist. The light got to be kind of interesting. At one point we thought we might go inside the light, so they actually created inside the light so you could see the light bulb inside and everything. Decided that it would have been so bright in there you couldn't have seen it anyway, so we ended up not doing it. There was a real light there when we shot the move. There was actually a hole in the floor and they went up through, but the focus problems were too immense to actually live with, so we just removed it. Little sets for in between the floors. There were special little sets that we shot for those gaps in the floor. Because of course there weren't gaps in the floors on the real set. Witness point problems. I'd never had these problems with witness points before. There are these little red lights. I call them Fink points because Mike Fink told me how to use them. But actually there's these guys at Aerocrane who've worked out the perfect way to make the LED strobe with the camera. And it's a perfect little tracking point. Problem is, usually the room's fairly bright. And so we put these things in there that usually were just these, you know, little red dots, and they ended up being big red flares in the room that had to be removed. So, oops. Well, actually, we got to reshoot some of those shots so many times we figured out how to fix that. It was a complicated number of things that had to happen just right. The boom had to move, the dolly had to move, the camera had to pan and tilt, she had to roll over. All these things had to happen at exactly the right point. And there was a point where we all couldn't see what it was that he was looking for. Usually you can tell. If you watch and you start realizing, okay, he's trying to get that right, and over and over again. But there got to be a point in that one where none of us knew what it was. We just knew that he could see something none of us could see. And we just kept waiting to get it, and we were looking at each other, and it was getting into overtime and late at night. It was the longest one. So there was just a camera move where we look up at it and it's static. Right now it's rolling like this, that's all CG, but we're looking at it static, and it flies across the room and comes down into the gap in the door that doesn't exist on that set. It was just for that and doing this, so it's just about Burnham up there in the skylight. And we had to build a lower one so that he could be up there, we could be below him, and there was enough room above it for the rain to fall. Because in fact, even on that, was it 50 foot to the perms set where they had to take the perms out to get the set in, the skylight was right against the ceiling, the actual hard ceiling of the set, so there was no place for rain to come down. And even on the 10-foot platform, it was too close to the ceiling. So we had to build a specially low one just for that. this
Then we
one.
have the in the closet plate.
Oh yeah, in the closet plate, which was shot in the 40-foot. I mean, on the big house. I mean, there's a CG closet. All the stuff down here was actually lighting in the closet that they're looking up in. So we had to create it all CG down here so that we could look up to that. So it's just that final plate was locked off. There was no tilt at all. We'd give them a plate that was looking up, and so they would try to somehow or another get into that room still looking up so that they didn't have to deal with the fact that the rest of the room didn't exist or had lighting in it or other problems. And of course, the first thing that Fincher wants to do is come in low and tilt up, so that they had to create the room at the bottom. What's funny is in the movie, the second it starts to move, we're done with it. But in any of the shot that we delivered had handle on it, and you can see the door pop open a bit, and you see the set hanging out there. Just the raw plywood and stuff, and it's not really dark out there or anything.
Basically, I mean, we spent 2 weeks or more to actually do the still photographs for Booth, which we did again on the IMAX camera. But going through that whole house with a camera of that size, trying to get that thing on Ubangi hanging over the stairwell to get those angles was,
Yeah.
It was tedious.
Yeah.
Once again, sounds like you're reading cue card. Do it again. Spin it. Spin it out. And action. Hey! They're in the elevator, both of them, heading down. Once again, a little bit more of a hiss.
The process we usually go through with them is when they know what we're going to be doing, they make a CG model of it. They go through the house and figure out what textures they'd want. So they come back with what we call maps that say these are the pictures that we need. And so it's just like working on a commercial shoot. You put an X through it and you move on to the next one. And you always have some, the cameraman's always a visual effects guy, so he always insists on wedging everything. And you think it would be click, click, and instead it's like every still takes 20 minutes. And
Yes, it did.
that shot took from previs to final execution the entire schedule, which I was saying to you earlier.
For a year.
Like 13 or 14 months of working on that shot for them. And this movie for us was like 24-month project, happened over 3 calendar years. It was like a long project, not for any good reasons, frankly. But they were kind of into that shot from the very day that he talked about doing it. Even though they weren't doing the previs, they knew about it. They had been sort of made aware of it. I think they resented not getting to do the previs. So they were involved in that shot forever and ever and ever. And it was one of the ones that, because it's so long, the DI became a big deal because of color timing. We'd scan those shots during a previous paradigm, so those plates were scanned a completely different way than the rest of the movie was scanned and had to be dealt with accordingly. We'd scanned it with more black, with the blacks more crushed than he ultimately ended up doing for the movie, so there wasn't any information there. So they had to sort of almost create the information in the blacks to make it look like the rest of the movie. There was lots of problems.